Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the exploration ship Harmony, watching the stars through the main window. His crew had been traveling for 6 months to reach this part of space. No human had ever been this far from Earth before. "Captain, we're getting something on the scanners," said Tony Rodriguez from his station. Tony was the ship's communications officer, a young man with quick hands and an even quicker mind. "It's big, sir. Really big." Jake walked over to look at the screen. A massive ship appeared on their sensors, 10 times larger than the Harmony. The ship looked like it was built for war, with sharp edges and weapon ports all along its sides. "That's not like any ship in our database," said Dr. Linda Hayes, the science officer. Linda was a small woman with gray hair, but her mind was sharp as a laser. She had spent 20 years studying alien technology, though she had never seen any real alien ships before today. "Should we run?" asked Tony, his voice tight with worry. Jake thought for a moment. The human government had sent them out here to make contact with alien species, not to run from them. "No. We came here to meet new people. Send them a message. Tony, tell them we come in peace." Tony's fingers moved quickly over his controls. "Message sent, Captain. Standard greeting in all the languages we know." They waited. The alien ship grew larger on their screen as it moved closer. Jake could see more details now. The ship was covered in thick armor and weapons that looked like they could destroy planets. "Captain," said Dr. Amanda Foster from the back of the bridge. Amanda was their expert on alien cultures, though like Linda, she had only studied theories before today. "If this species built a ship like that, they probably solve problems with violence." "Maybe," said Jake. "But maybe they just want to protect themselves like we do." The Harmony shook suddenly. Red lights flashed all over the bridge. "They're pulling us in with some kind of tractor beam," Tony said, his voice getting higher. "I can't break free." Jake watched as their small ship was drawn into the belly of the giant alien vessel. He had always known this mission might be dangerous, but seeing it happen was different from just thinking about it. "Listen to me," Jake said to his crew. "We knew this might happen. Remember our training. Be respectful. Be calm, and remember that they're probably just as scared of us as we are of them." The Harmony settled into what looked like a landing bay. Through the windows, they could see the bay was full of smaller ships, all built for fighting. The air outside looked breathable, but Jake wasn't taking any chances. "Everyone put on your breathing gear," he ordered. "Linda, bring your medical scanner. Amanda, bring your translation computer. Tony, bring the communication device." The crew put on their equipment and walked to the airlock. Jake took a deep breath and opened the door. What they saw made them all stop and stare. The aliens were huge, at least 8 feet tall, and they looked like giant insects. They had 4 arms, each ending in sharp claws. Their heads were covered in what looked like natural armor, and their eyes were large and black. They moved with the quick, deadly grace of predators. There were 12 of them waiting, all carrying weapons that hummed with energy. The largest one stepped forward. When it spoke, its voice sounded like clicking and buzzing, but Amanda's computer quickly translated the words. "I am War Commander Thektar of the Zephyrian Empire. You are prisoners. Your species is unknown and therefore dangerous. You will be executed at sunrise, as is our law." Jake stepped forward, keeping his hands visible and empty. "I am Captain Jake Morrison of Earth. We come in peace. We want to be friends." Thektar made a sound that the computer translated as laughter, but it didn't sound happy. "Friends? Weak species always speak of friendship before they attack. You will die with honor or die as cowards. Choose." "We choose neither," Jake said calmly. "We choose to help." This seemed to confuse the alien commander. Thektar's head tilted to one side, like a bird looking at something strange. "Help? You are prisoners. You have nothing to offer." Linda stepped forward. "Captain, their ship's engines are making a strange sound. I think they have a problem with their life support systems." Jake nodded. "War Commander Thektar, our science officer says your ship has a problem. We can help you fix it." "Why would you help enemies?" Because you're not our enemies, Jake said. You're just people we haven't met yet, and people should help each other. Thektar stared at Jake for a long moment. The other aliens seemed confused too. They spoke to each other in their clicking language, but Amanda's computer couldn't translate the rapid conversation. Finally, Thektar spoke again. This is a trick. Prisoners do not offer help. They beg for mercy or threaten revenge. We're not like other prisoners, Jake said with a small smile. We're humans, and humans make friends with everyone. Impossible, Thektar said. We were born for war. We have conquered 12 worlds. We know only strength and victory. Maybe, said Jake. But you also know how to build amazing ships and create beautiful weapons. You're clearly very smart. Smart people can learn new things. Dr. Linda Hayes stepped forward. If you let me look at your life support system, I can probably fix it in a few hours. Consider it a gift from one species to another. Thektar looked at his fellow aliens, then back at the humans. Jake could see the confusion in the aliens' large black eyes. This was clearly not how first contact usually went for the Zephyrians. You would repair our ship? While you are our prisoners? Of course, Jake said. That's what friends do. They help each other, even when things are difficult. For the first time, Thektar seemed to have no response. He stood there, staring at the small group of humans who had just offered to help the very people who were planning to kill them. The other Zephyrians waited for their commander's decision, but Thektar seemed lost in thought. Finally, he spoke. Very well, you may examine our systems, but you will be watched at all times. Any trick and you die immediately. No tricks, Jake promised. Just friends helping friends. As they walked deeper into the alien ship, Jake noticed that Thektar kept looking back at them with something that looked almost like curiosity. Maybe, just maybe, this was going to work. War Commander Thektar stood in his private quarters, staring at the wall display that showed his ship's engine readings. For the first time in 3 days, all the numbers were green. The life support systems were working perfectly, thanks to the humans. He did not understand what was happening to him. The humans had worked for 18 straight hours to fix the failing systems. They had asked for nothing in return except water and some food. When Thektar offered them better quarters, the human leader, Jake Morrison, had said thank you, but asked if the Zephyrian engineers could watch them work instead. We learn better when we teach others, Morrison had explained with that strange facial expression humans called a smile. Thektar touched the communication panel. Send Dr. Linda Hayes to my quarters, he ordered. The human female arrived a few minutes later, carrying a small device that beeped softly. She was not afraid, even though she was alone with a Zephyrian warrior who could kill her with one claw. You wanted to see me, War Commander? Linda asked. Your repairs are holding well, Thektar said. My engineers say they learned much from watching you work. Good. Learning is important. Your engineers are very skilled. They just needed to see a different way to solve the problem. Thektar moved closer to the human. Even sitting down, he was taller than she was. Why do you help us? We are your captors. We plan to kill you. Linda tilted her head, the same way Thektar had seen young Zephyrians do when they were thinking. Because that's what people do. When someone has a problem, you help them fix it. But we are enemies. Are we? Linda asked. You haven't hurt us. You gave us food and let us work. You could have killed us already, but you didn't. That doesn't sound like an enemy to me. Thektar felt something strange in his chest. It was not pain, but it was not comfortable either. He had no word for this feeling. On the bridge, Tony Rodriguez was working with a young Zephyrian named Krelhan. Krelhan was smaller than the other warriors, and the other Zephyrians often pushed him around. Your language is very complex, Tony said as he adjusted his translation computer. It has layers of meaning that our computers miss. I am not good at warrior speak, Krelhan said quietly. I was born weak. I should have been removed as a hatchling, but my nest mother hid me. Tony stopped working and looked at the alien. Removed? Killed, Krelhan explained. Weak ones are dangerous to the hive. They make the whole group vulnerable. Tony felt sick. That's horrible. You're not weak. You understand our technology better than anyone else on this ship. Understanding machines is not strength, Krellhan said. Only battle strength matters. That's not true, Tony said firmly. You fixed our communication array in 10 minutes. That takes real intelligence. Intelligence is strength, too. Krellhan stared at Tony with his large black eyes. You believe this? Of course I do. Different kinds of strength are all valuable. You don't have to be a warrior to be important. Meanwhile, Dr. Amanda Foster was in the ship's data center with another Zephyrian called Veltara. Veltara was a record keeper, which was considered a low position among the warriors. Your people have such interesting stories, Amanda said as she read through the Zephyrian historical files. This poem about the first victory at Kepler 7 is beautiful. You can read our old language? Veltara asked, surprised. Some of poetry is similar in many species. It's about feelings, not just words. Amanda pointed to a section of text. This part talks about missing home while in battle, doesn't it? Yes, Veltara said softly. My ancestor wrote that. But warriors are not supposed to miss home. We are supposed to think only of victory. Everyone misses home, Amanda said. Even warriors. That doesn't make them weak, it makes them normal. Veltara was quiet for a long time. Then she said, Would you like to see more of our old writings? There are many poems about feelings that warriors are not supposed to have, HFY. In his quarters, Thektar received a message from High War Marshal Zekneth on the homeworld. Zekneth's face appeared on the screen, showing deep anger. Thektar, why have you not reported the destruction of the alien vessel? My sensors show it is still intact in your bay. High War Marshal, the situation is complex. These humans are different from other species we have encountered. Different how? Are they stronger warriors? No, sir. They are helpful. They repaired our failing life support systems and asked for nothing in return. Zekneth's eyes grew wide with shock. You allowed prisoners to access our ship's systems? Have you lost your mind? They saved the lives of my crew, sir. Without their help, we would have died when the life support failed completely. Lies, Zekneth roared. No species helps their captors. This is impossible. You will kill them immediately and return home. But sir, they could teach us much. Their technology is different from ours and they seem willing to share knowledge. I do not care about their technology. I care about Zephyrian strength. Kill them now. That is an order. The communication ended, leaving Thektar alone with his confusion. He was a warrior, bred for battle, and trained to follow orders without question. But something inside him was changing. He walked to the observation deck where Jake Morrison stood looking out at the stars. The human captain seemed peaceful, not worried about his situation. Your people are remarkable, Thektar said. Jake turned and smiled. Thank you, so are yours. Krellhan helped Tony improve our communications by 30%, and Veltara showed Amanda some amazing historical documents. Krellhan and Veltara are not warriors. They are weak ones. They don't seem weak to me, Jake said. They seem talented in ways that your warrior culture doesn't recognize. Thektar felt that strange feeling in his chest again. War Marshal Zekneth has ordered me to kill you. Jake nodded calmly. I figured that might happen. What will you do? I do not know, Thektar admitted. I have never disobeyed an order before. But I have never met beings like you before either. What do you think is right? Jake asked. The question hit Thektar like a physical blow. In all his years as a warrior, no one had ever asked him what he thought was right. Orders were orders. Victory was everything. Personal feelings were weakness. But now he was having personal feelings, and they did not feel like weakness. I think, Thektar said slowly, that killing you would be wrong. You have done nothing but help us. Jake smiled. Then maybe you know what to do. Thektar looked at this small human who had somehow made him question everything he had been taught about strength, weakness, and what it meant to be a warrior. For the first time in his life, he was thinking for himself, instead of just following orders, and it was terrifying. News traveled fast through the galaxy. Within 2 weeks, every major species had heard the impossible story about humans befriending the Zephyrians. Most thought it was fake news or some kind of trick. Ambassador Velsha floated in her crystal chamber aboard the trading ship Bright Star. She was from the planet Altair 7, where her people were made of living crystal that could change colors with their emotions. Right now, she was glowing pale blue, which meant she was confused. "Gorwell, play that message again," she said to her aide. Gorwell was from the water world Aquatica. He looked like a large frog but could breathe both air and water. His webbed fingers moved over the controls and the message played again. "This is War Commander Thektar of the Zephyrian Empire. I speak to all species in the galaxy. The humans have shown us a new way to live. They have proven that strength comes not just from battle, but from helping others. We are no longer the Zephyrian Empire. We are now the Zephyrian Federation, and we seek peace with all species." Velsha turned bright orange, which meant she was shocked. This cannot be real. The Zephyrians have been warlike for thousands of years. They destroyed the Keth colonies just last year. "The message came from Thektar's own ship," Gorwell said in his deep, croaking voice. "And our long-range sensors confirm that Zephyrian attack fleets have stopped moving. They're actually pulling back from contested systems." "Set course for the human ship," Velsha ordered. "I must see this with my own eyes." Far across the galaxy, in the dark space between stars, Pack Leader Morgath read the same reports. Morgath was a void stalker, one of the most feared predators in known space. His people hunted other species for sport, and they were very good at it. Morgath was 12 feet tall, covered in black scales, with claws that could cut through ship armor. His yellow eyes glowed in the darkness of his ship as he thought about this news. "Interesting," he said to his pack. "Either these humans are the greatest threat we have ever faced, or they are the most entertaining prey." "Should we hunt them, Pack Leader?" asked his second-in-command, a smaller stalker named Kethmar. "Not yet," Morgath replied. "I want to understand what makes them so special. How does a weak species change warriors like the Zephyrians? This requires investigation." Back on the human ship, Harmony, Captain Jake Morrison was in the engineering section with Ryan Adams and Katie Bell. Ryan was their best engineer, a tall man with strong hands and a gentle nature. Katie was their new communications officer, brought aboard when Tony Rodriguez decided to stay with the Zephyrians to continue his language studies. They were working with 3 Zephyrians who had never been allowed to use their talents before. Krelhan was designing new engine improvements. Veltara was creating beautiful artwork to decorate the ship's walls. A third Zephyrian named Dekra was composing music that mixed human and Zephyrian styles. "This is amazing," Ryan said as he watched Krelhan work. "Your people have been ignoring incredible talent for generations. We did not know talent could be used for creation instead of destruction," Krelhan replied. "You humans taught us that building things can be as satisfying as breaking them." Katie was recording everything for the human government back on Earth. "The reaction from other species has been incredible," she told Jake. "We're getting messages from dozens of worlds asking how we did it." "We didn't do anything special," Jake said. "We just treated them like people instead of enemies." Dr. Amanda Foster entered the room carrying a tablet full of data. She had been studying Zephyrian history and biology for weeks. "Jake, I think I figured out why this worked," she said excitedly. "The Zephyrians weren't always warriors. Their home planet went through a terrible disaster about 3,000 years ago. The environment became deadly, and only the most aggressive individuals survived to have children. So they evolved to be fighters because they had to be," Ryan said. "Exactly. But now their planet is stable again, and they don't need to fight for survival anymore. Their aggressive instincts can be redirected toward other things like art, engineering, and exploration." "That's brilliant," Jake said. "But it means other species might be able to change too, if we understand why they became aggressive in the first place." 3 days later, the trading ship Bright Star arrived at the location where the Harmony and Thektar's ship were docked together. Velsha couldn't believe what she saw. The 2 ships were connected by a tunnel, and beings from both species were moving freely between them. Humans and Zephyrians were working side by side on various projects. She could see them laughing, together sharing meals and even playing some kind of game. "This is impossible," she whispered, her crystal body flashing through several colors. "Greetings, Ambassador Velshaw," came a voice over the communication system. It was Jake Morrison. "We've been expecting you. Would you like to come aboard and see what we're doing?" An hour later, Velshaw found herself in the Harmony's main meeting room with Jake Thektar and several other humans and Zephyrians. Her body was glowing bright green, which meant she was fascinated. "How did you do this?" she asked Jake directly. "Every species in the galaxy has tried to make peace with the Zephyrians. All failed." "We didn't try to make peace," Jake explained. "We tried to make friends. There's a difference." "I do not understand the difference." Thektar spoke up. "Peace means we agree not to fight. Friendship means we care about each other's well-being. The humans cared about us even when we were planning to kill them. They saw potential in us that we did not see in ourselves," added Krelhan. "They believed we could be more than just warriors." Velshaw's body turned deep purple, which meant she was thinking hard. "If this can work with the Zephyrians, perhaps it can work with other difficult species." "That's what we're hoping," said Dr. Amanda Foster. "We're developing a program to help aggressive species find peaceful outlets for their natural traits." "The hegemony of Syl would be very interested in this program," Velshaw said. "We represent 47 peaceful trading worlds. If you can help us deal with aggressive neighbors, it would benefit everyone." Jake smiled. "We'd be happy to help. But remember, the goal isn't to defeat aggressive species. It's to help them find better ways to use their strengths." As the meeting continued, none of them noticed the dark ship watching from the edge of sensor range. Pack Leader Morgath observed everything, his yellow eyes glowing with interest. "Fascinating," he said to himself. "These humans don't try to defeat their enemies. They try to change them into friends. I have never seen such a strategy." He opened a communication channel to his pack. "We will not hunt these humans yet. Instead, we will watch and learn. If they can change warriors into friends, what might they try to do with hunters like us?" For the first time in his long life, Morgath was curious about something other than the hunt. These humans had done something that should have been impossible, and he wanted to understand how. Across the galaxy, the news continued to spread. The impossible had happened. The warlike Zephyrians had become peaceful. And it was all because of a small group of humans who believed that anyone could change, no matter how dangerous they seemed. The universe was about to become a very different place. The emergency alert came at 3 a.m. ship time. Captain Jake Morrison ran to the bridge in his sleeping clothes, his heart pounding. Katie Bell was already at her station, her face pale with fear. "What's happening?" Jake asked. "Long range. Sensors picked up a ship," Katie said, her voice shaking. "It's not like anything in our database. The energy signature is wrong, Jake. It's not normal matter." Dr. Ben Carter hurried onto the bridge carrying his analysis equipment. Ben was the newest crew member, a young scientist who studied the strangest life forms in the galaxy. He looked at the sensor readings and went white. "Oh no," he whispered. "That's a devourer ship." Everyone on the bridge froze. Even Thektar, who had been working late in the engine room, stopped what he was doing when he heard the name over the communications. The devourers were the nightmare species that every civilization feared. They were older than most galactic civilizations, and they had one terrible trait that made them impossible to negotiate with. They could only survive by eating other intelligent beings, not just their bodies, but their minds and souls too. "How far away?" Jake asked, trying to keep his voice calm. 6 hours at current speed," Katie replied. "They're heading straight for us." Thektar's voice came over the ship's communication system. "Captain Morrison, we should run. Even the Zephyrian. Empire flees from the devourers. They cannot be reasoned with, they cannot be stopped, they only consume." Jake looked around the bridge at his crew. Dr. Linda Hayes had arrived and was studying the sensor data. Dr. Amanda Foster was reading everything the ship's computer had about devourer encounters. Ben Carter was preparing his biological analysis. "Tools?" "No," Jake said finally. We don't run. Jake, these aren't like the Zephyrians, Linda said carefully. The Zephyrians were aggressive, but they were still people. The Devourers are something else. They literally eat consciousness. Every species that has tried to communicate with them has been consumed. Maybe, Jake said, but maybe no one has tried the right approach. 4 hours later, the Devourer ship was close enough to see clearly. It looked like it was made of bone and shadow, twisted into shapes that hurt to look at. The ship was smaller than Thektar's vessel, but it radiated an aura of wrongness that made everyone nervous. Jake stood in the shuttle bay with his team. He had decided to meet the Devourers face to face, just like he had with the Zephyrians. Ben Carter was with him, along with Dr. Linda Hayes and Dr. Amanda Foster. Thektar had insisted on coming too, even though he was terrified. Remember, Jake said to his team, they're still people even if they're very different from us. There has to be something we can connect with. The Devourer shuttle that approached their ship was silent and moved in ways that defied normal physics. When it landed, the airlock opened with a sound like screaming wind. 3 beings emerged, and they were worse than anyone had imagined. The Devourers were tall and thin, with skin that seemed to shift between solid and shadow. Their faces were almost human, but their eyes were holes that seemed to go on forever. When they moved, reality seemed to bend around them. The largest one spoke in a voice that echoed inside everyone's heads. I am Zathul, Hive Queen of the Southern Reaches. We have come to feed. Your consciousness will nourish us for many cycles. Jake stepped forward, fighting every instinct that told him to run. I'm Captain Jake Morrison. We're explorers, not food. We'd like to talk. Zathul tilted her head in a way that was almost curious. Talk? Food does not talk. Food screams and then feeds us. You are food. Maybe we don't have to be, Jake said. Maybe we can be something else. Before anyone could react, one of the smaller Devourers moved faster than thought and grabbed Ben Carter. The young scientist screamed as the creature began to feed on his mind. But something strange happened. Instead of just draining Ben's consciousness, the Devourer suddenly stopped and let him go. Ben collapsed to the ground, alive but shaken. The young Devourer made a sound like crying. It hurts, the creature said. Feeding hurts. Why does it hurt? Zathul stared at her subordinate with shock. Kelvash, what are you doing? Feed. Do. Not feel. I cannot stop feeling, Kelvash replied. The pain is too much. Ben Carter, still on the ground but conscious, looked up at the young Devourer with wonder instead of fear. You're empathic, he said softly. You feel what your victims feel. That's why it hurts. Silence. Food, Zathul commanded. But she sounded uncertain. Dr. Linda Hayes was running scans on her medical device. Jake, look at this. Their brain structure is incredibly complex. The parts that process emotion are huge, much larger than in humans. That makes sense, said Dr. Amanda Foster, studying her cultural analysis. If they feed on consciousness, they would need to understand consciousness deeply. They would have to be extremely empathic to hunt effectively. Jake looked at Zathul with new understanding. You feel everything your victims feel, don't you? Every moment of fear, every second of pain. How do you stand it? For the first time, Zathul looked confused instead of threatening. We endure. It is our nature. We must feed to survive. But what if you didn't have to? Ben Carter said, getting back to his feet. What if there was another way? Impossible. We have tried everything. Only the consciousness of living beings can sustain us. Linda Hayes was still studying her scanner. Readings. Wait, Jake, their digestive systems are incredibly complex. But look at this energy pattern. I think they're not actually eating the consciousness itself. They're eating something the consciousness produces. What do you mean? Jake asked. Emotions, Linda said excitedly. They feed on emotional energy, especially strong emotions like fear and despair. The consciousness is just the source, not the actual food. Ben Carter's eyes went wide. If that's true, then we might be able to create synthetic emotional energy. Or find other sources that don't involve hurting people. Sathul moved closer, her shadow form rippling with what looked like hope. You believe this is possible? We can try, Jake said. But we'll need your help. We need to understand how your feeding process actually works. The young devourer, Kelvash, spoke up again. I would help. I am tired of causing pain. If there is another way, I will do anything to find it. Kelvash, you forget yourself, Zathul said, but her voice was less commanding than before. No, Queen Zathul. I remember myself. Before we became devourers, we were healers. We used our empathic abilities to help others, not harm them. The old songs speak of this. Zathul was silent for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was softer. The old songs. I had forgotten the old songs. What if, Jake said carefully, instead of feeding on fear and pain, you could feed on positive emotions? Joy, love, gratitude? What if people could feed you willingly without being harmed? Is such a thing possible? Zathul asked. We won't know until we try, Linda Hayes said. But if you're willing to work with us, we can research it together. Dr. Amanda Foster stepped forward. And if it works, think about what you could do with your empathic abilities. You could be the greatest counselors and healers in the galaxy. You understand pain better than anyone. That means you could help others heal from pain too. Zathul looked at each of the humans, then at Thektar, who had been listening to everything with amazement. You would do this for us? Even after we tried to consume you? Jake smiled, the same warm smile he had given Thektar weeks ago. That's what friends do. They help each other find better ways to live. For the first time in thousands of years, the Hive Queen of the Devourers felt something other than hunger. She felt hope. Very well, Captain Jake Morrison, we will try your way, but if it fails, it won't fail, Jake said confidently. Because we're going to work on it together, and together, we can solve any problem. In the darkness of space, the impossible was happening again. The most feared species in the galaxy was learning to hope. 5 years had passed since Captain Jake Morrison first met War Commander Thektar. The galaxy was a completely different place now. Jake stood on the observation deck of Unity Station, the largest space station ever built. Through the huge windows, he could see ships from dozens of different species docked together. Humans worked alongside Zephyrians, who worked alongside crystal beings from Altair 7, who worked alongside reformed devourers. Hard to believe it all started with one broken life support system, said Dr. Linda Hayes, joining Jake at the window. Linda was now the head of the Interspecies Science Consortium, the organization that helped different species share their knowledge and technology. Sometimes the biggest changes start with the smallest acts of kindness, Jake replied. They watched as a group of young beings from various species played together in the station's park area. Human children ran around with young Zephyrians while small crystal beings sparkled in the artificial sunlight. Even a few young devourers were there, their shadow forms flickering with what Jake had learned was their version of laughter. Tony Rodriguez's voice came over the station's communication system. Tony was now the head of the Universal Translation Project, working to help all species understand each other better. Attention Unity Station. The transport from the Outer Rim has arrived with our newest visitors. Please welcome them with our usual friendship, Jake smiled. Another impossible case. The nightmare feeders, Linda said, reading from her datapad. They're living shadows that feed on fear itself. The Galactic Council says they're completely unreasonable. That's what they said about the Devourers, Jake pointed out. And now Dr. Zathul runs the most successful trauma counseling center in the galaxy. Indeed, the former Hive Queen had become something remarkable. After learning to feed on positive emotions freely given by grateful patients, she had discovered that her empathic abilities made her incredibly good at helping people heal from psychological wounds. Her counseling centers were now found on every major world. Jake made his way to the docking bay where the newest arrivals were waiting. The nightmare feeders looked exactly like their name suggested. They were patches of living darkness that moved like oil across the floor and walls. Ambassador Vel Shah was there too, her crystal body glowing soft blue with nervousness. Beside her stood Thektar, who was now the elected Prime Minister of the Zephyrian Federation. The old warrior had learned to use his strategic mind for peaceful purposes, and he had become one of the galaxy's best negotiators. "Welcome to Unity Station," Jake said to the dark shapes. "I'm Jake Morrison, director of the Galactic Friendship Initiative." One of the shadows rose up and formed something like a face. When it spoke, its voice was like whispers in a dark room. "I am Void Whisper Nethron. We come because we have no choice. Our hunting grounds are gone. Other species flee our systems, leaving us with nothing to feed upon." "We understand you. Feed on fear," said Dr. Ben Carter, who had become the galaxy's expert on unusual biology. "But what if I told you that fear isn't your only option?" "Explain," Nethron demanded. Ben activated a holographic display. "We've learned that many species who think they feed on negative emotions can actually feed on any strong emotion. The devourers thought they needed fear and pain, but now they thrive on joy and gratitude. You suggest we feed on happiness?" Another shadow being spoke, sounding confused. "Why not?" asked Dr. Amanda Foster, who now directed the Cultural Evolution Institute. "Think about it. Fear is just excitement directed at something dangerous. But excitement about good things feels much better and doesn't hurt anyone." A third shadow being flickered with what might have been interest. "This one is called Shadewalker Kethva. Kethva admits, feeding on fear has always felt wrong. The terror of others causes Kethva pain, but Kethva must eat to survive." Jake stepped closer to the shadow beings. "What if you could feed on the excitement people feel when they ride thrill rides or watch exciting sports or go on adventures? Same strong emotions, but fun instead of harmful." Nethron rippled with surprise. This might be possible, but how would we survive? During the transition period? "The same way we helped everyone else," Jake said. "Together, we have emotional energy collection systems now, designed by Dr. Sathul and her team. People can donate excess emotional energy when they're feeling particularly happy or excited. It's completely harmless, and it helps species like yours." Thektar stepped forward. "The Zephyrian Federation would be honored to host your people during this transition. We understand what it's like to change from something feared to something welcomed." Over the next few weeks, the transformation began. Jake watched with amazement as the nightmare feeders discovered they could indeed feed on positive excitement. Within a month, they had become the galaxy's most popular entertainment directors, creating thrilling but safe adventures that fed them while delighting their audiences. Jake was in his office reviewing reports when an alarm sounded. But this wasn't a danger alarm. It was the arrival signal for an unscheduled visitor. Pack Leader Morgath entered the office, his massive form barely fitting through the doorway. The Void Stalker had been watching human activities for years, never quite ready to make contact. "Captain Morrison," Morgath said in his deep, rumbling voice, "I have observed your work for 5 years. I have seen you change warriors into peacekeepers, devourers into healers, and nightmare feeders into entertainers. And now you're curious about what we might offer the galaxy's greatest hunters?" Jake asked with a smile. Morgath's yellow eyes gleamed. "My pack grows restless. We have hunted every dangerous creature in the galaxy. There are no more challenges worthy of our skills." "What if I told you about the most dangerous unexplored regions of space?" Jake said. "Places where rescue teams fear to go, where lost ships disappear forever, where only the most skilled hunters could survive. You speak of the dark nebula regions. Even we avoid those places." "Exactly. The galaxy needs explorers brave enough and skilled enough to map those regions and rescue people who get lost there. Who better than the Void Stalkers to become our rescue specialists?" For the first time in Jake's experience, Morgath looked genuinely excited. To hunt not for death but for life? To use our skills to save instead of destroy? "Think about it," Jake continued. "You'd still get all the thrill of the hunt, all the challenge and danger you crave. But instead of ending lives, you'd be saving them. Instead of being feared, you'd be heroes." Morgath was quiet for a long moment. Then he threw back his head and made a sound Jake had never heard from a void stalker. Laughter. Captain Morrison, you are either the bravest being in the galaxy or the most foolish, but you have given my pack a purpose we never dreamed of. We accept. 6 months later, Jake stood once again on the observation deck of Unity Station, but now the station was 10 times larger, with sections designed for dozens of different species. The Void Stalkers had their own dock for their rescue ships. The Nightmare Feeders had built an amazing entertainment complex. The Devourers ran counseling centers that helped beings from across the galaxy. Dr. Linda Hayes joined him again, this time with exciting news. Jake, we just received word about a new species that's been discovered. They're called the Fear Weavers, and apparently they create nightmares for entire planets. Jake chuckled. Let me guess, the Galactic Council says they're impossible to reason with? Of course they do. They always say that. Well then, Jake said, watching a group of children from 12 different species play together in perfect harmony. I suppose we'd better go make some new friends. As he walked toward the shuttle bay to meet the latest impossible species, Jake reflected on how the galaxy had changed. Every species had something beautiful to offer once you helped them find it. The warriors became protectors, the devourers became healers, the nightmare feeders became entertainers, and the hunters became rescuers. And somewhere out there, the fear weavers were about to discover that even they had a place in this new galaxy. A galaxy where friendship was possible with anyone, no matter how scary they seemed at first. The universe had learned humanity's greatest secret. Everyone deserves a chance to be better than they were yesterday, and with the right friend to help them, anyone can change.